Welcome back to the Apprentice 121 podcast. This has been a bit of a while, but I'm glad to be back with Richard and Craig tonight. We've got a bit to talk about. Before we get into all of that, how are you doing, Craig?
Yeah, good. It feels like a lifetime ago, but I know we've all been chatting offline, and it's just diaries matching up. Everybody's busy, which is nice because you hear murmurings that the industry's maybe up, maybe down, not too sure. But I think from our points of view, it's still going strong, which is a fortunate position to be in. So yeah, it's just been busy with work, bigger projects, bigger designs, and looking forward to what the next 12 months bring, to be honest.
Wicked. I've seen some of your posts actually on LinkedIn the last couple of weeks, and some of the installs you boys are chucking out are amazing. I've just connected with Johnny as well on LinkedIn and sharing the same. That work is another level to the stuff I'm involved with. So fair play, mate. Must be stressful as hell, though. We'll get to a bit of that later on. But how are you doing, Richard?
Very well, thank you, mate. Very well. I think I seen your brother yesterday. Looked very similar to you.
Did you really? I've only just got off a boat from somewhere, if you listen to the rumours.
They have spoke about these immigrants before, Mark.
It didn't look anything like the boat behind me, did it? Was it very similar to this one?
No, it was a bit bigger than that. It had a bar as well and a dance floor. You'd have been in your element on there.
Okay, but still slow.
Still very slow. 8 hours. Belfast to Liverpool.
Very well. Yeah, good. Busy as always. Really good event. Hosted by ETT, as you know, but I'm sure we'll have a chat about that. Plenty going on with the forthcoming Amendment 4. So the JPEL subcommittees are starting to look from next week at all the comments. So we've got meeting after meeting after meeting all scheduled in to try and get through the comments ready for beginning of March, when that's the end of the commenting period, as they say, plus other bits and pieces. But yeah, all good, Matt, all good. But not as busy as you.
That was actually top of my list on my little list I've made here, is around the draft public comment and Amendment 4 and how you're now going to review that. I didn't end up making any comments. We had this chat over in Ireland. We will get to explaining what that was in a bit more detail. But I didn't really see. There was one thing that I thought I might have commented on, and that was around the PAS going in as this document that is going to be stated it's been a requirement in the regs, and just how some of the manufacturers might take hold of the PAS themselves to start twisting it. But I don't think that it should be excluded on that basis alone. I think we just need to keep the gatekeeping around that PAS secure, because it is an important thing industry does need to be doing. So I never commented in the end, but I'm sure there's lots of comments for you guys and girls to work through. Maybe hundreds, thousands. What's it end up looking like?
I don't know well, there was some figures spoken about last week, but because it was our product safety conference Thursday, I wasn't able to attend subcommittee D. But there's certainly quite a lot for B, which is obviously everything to do with fire and things like that, and D is all special locations, installations, etc. So be interesting to see the number of comments, but there's always, they're running into the hundreds, to the point where there's a meeting every week now until March for every subcommittee. So Dave will have one Monday, Wednesday, and I'll have one Tuesday, Thursday for subcommittee B Tuesday, subcommittee D Thursday, from now until March, to try and work our way through, because all comments have to be reviewed. They have to be gone through, basically. You can't ignore anyone's comments, and then they get put into different categories, because some of them might not be relevant for this amendment, or maybe saved for a future amendment, etc. Or some of them can be just a bit silly, if that makes sense, which is a shame. But
and I think it's important to say, I might have got this wrong, but I think it's anonymous as well, isn't it? So no matter what the rumours say, people can't say, oh, it's because so-and-so's favoured or so-and-so. The people reviewing the comments don't know who's written what, so therefore it is completely anonymous. It's not a favouritism or boys' club, as rumours might lead you to believe. It is genuine reviews and debates, and it's a consensus at the end of the day, isn't it? It's not one person's opinion. It's everybody talks about that comment. You have an outcome, and majority effectively rules as to what takes place against that situation. Is that right?
Yeah, and everything's documented. So they'll be split into different categories. So some of the comments might be purely editorial ones, which is fine. Some are technical, which is fine. Some may need some work on the standard that goes with that reg, if that makes sense. So if that goes into a fire standard or equipment standards, there may need to be some further work on that. But everything's split into different categories. So it is really, really interesting to dig a bit deeper into some of the changes or proposed changes, or indeed new parts that are going to be put in. And for once in my career, instead of guessing as to why something's come in, I'll actually have an understanding of the background of why it's come in. And that's good, because when people ask the question, well, why have they done that? Or why has this happened? Or this is going to be unachievable, or they've done that because then I've got to buy this extra piece of test equipment, or whatever it might be. There's always a reason, as Craig will know, as to why things get changed or brought in. And generally, it's to either align with international or European standards or safety. And that's all that matters. If you're making something safer, everything keeps evolving, doesn't it? So it'll be interesting the next few weeks. Be busy, but be interesting. And it'll be nice to finally see what actually comes out in 2026. Yeah.
And I think that's interesting around what we do with the regs and the patterns and that sort of stuff moving forward, like you say, Mark, because are the wiring regs a product standard, or are they a guide effectively to install? And to me, at points, I would suggest we're slowly blurring the lines as to whether it's between product standard versus install guidance, and should we be talking about, specifying the indents on car charging, for example, or should some of them be taken out, because some of them are to do with products rather than to do with the safety of the standard. And products we don't necessarily have control of as electricians, and as we all know, product standards govern other things. Like if you said to anybody, what's the product standard behind how a cable's tested, whatever cable you want, take your pick. We don't ever read that. We just get the guidance on how we can use the cable. So we need to be clear, in my opinion, where that line sits for some of these options as to what is a product requirement and what is a install requirement effectively. But that's just my opinion. My opinion doesn't have to be right, but that is how I see, especially as technology gets more advanced and things start to get closer together, how do we keep that difference between the documents?
It's a good point. I think, we've discussed around that a little bit on this podcast before, that there is that blurring of the lines, Craig. I totally agree. And I think there's a desire from the regulation authors and the committees around it to try and help fill the void, I think, more than blurring the lines as I've worded it and you have then. I think they're trying to pass knowledge into the installer base that we don't have access to, really. So a lot of these product standards and other standards cost such a lot of money and are buried in places on BSI and such that we're never going to have eyeballs on. So I think they may be trying to bring bits of it into our sphere, if you like. So we've got that awareness, but it's maybe going a bit too far. And we've got the IET standards coming out as well now, where I think they're maybe trying to pull bits out of the regs now into that space. So it's still in amongst what we need to know, but not in the regs. So maybe that's the way it needs to be approached. I don't know, but yeah, big respect to all the people who are on these committees doing this stuff. And that's why I didn't comment this time, because I didn't think I had anything really of value to add to all of the great people doing that. And I didn't want to waste your time in reading just a comment for comment's sake, really. I think it is important that industry gets involved and feedback, as we've said a lot, but with purpose. And yeah, I just thought this time it seemed to be more of an alignment with international standards and not really that much revolutionary, shall we say. I may be wrong and other people might think differently, and that's why it's asked to the whole industry, isn't it?
Yeah, and this year it's been a massive push to encourage people to comment from all organisations, us included, to try and, explain the process that goes behind, updating and putting the regs together, and to encourage people to have a look at what may be coming in, what may be changing, and then comment on it. If you don't think it's a good idea, then comment, but explain why you don't think it's a good idea, etc., etc. That's an important thing. I attended a working group with ACO a couple of weeks ago with a lot of the local councils, etc. And I did a little presentation on some of the main changes in Amendment 4. And there was quite a lot of discussion around the proposed removal of the FI code, which, as an organisation, we haven't really supported. There are times when you may need it, but it's certainly, you shouldn't need that in a simple domestic or similar type installation, because something's either safe or it's not safe. Why would you need an FI, really? But in a more commercial industrial type installation, you may need an FI because you may not know or have the relevant technical information to decide whether something's safe or unsafe. So the proposed change to remove that was quite an interesting conversation with some of the housing associations and local councils, where, you know, they receive a lot of EICRs from maybe subcontractors that FI a lot of things that really shouldn't be FI. So they were quite pleased that that was maybe going to be a change, and they were quite supportive of that. And I did encourage them to then, you don't have to just comment because you think something's a bad idea. Equally, you can comment, you think it's a good idea because of this, this, and this. So, you know, they put some comments in, which is good. So yeah, it was, you know, it was a worthwhile conversation. So that there's been more happen this year to promote the DPC and to get people involved than I've ever known it in all the years that I've been doing it, if that makes sense. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah,
so it's good to hear. And the FI one is an interesting one. I think there maybe needs to be a separation for domestic EICRs, maybe it's undocumented. It's different. I don't know, because we have all these different forms and different codes, and maybe we're just overcomplicating it. But we're trying to cover all installations, and it's such a vast industry now with so much going on. Maybe trying to get that in one form to cover it all is an unrealistic goal. Maybe it does need that. I don't know.
Can I ask it in a different way? Should we have more than one form? And the reason being, landlords want EICRs now because that's what they get told by the government and tenancy and selling your house and everything else. So even on new installations, I have seen it where an installation certificate is produced and then almost instantly an EICR has to be produced as well, because that's the only form that people can sell the house, or estate agents or anybody can take, is in the format of an EICR. So if that is now the method, if you like, should we not just have one form that kind of covers, and then we can allow for a tick box of this is a new installation, this is an inspection on a current installation, what is it, and is it satisfactory or is it not? Because it seems silly to make another form just because it's only accepted in one format and not the other, but we're told to do an EIC if it's a new installation. Why couldn't we just do it as one? I agree with the FI codes coming out. To me, and again, my opinion, it was a way for people to do lazy EICRs. Can't bother to check that FI, come back another day, charge for another day's work. Like, just do it when you're there. And if it's genuinely not able to be done, well, that should be in your operational limitations that you've agreed anyway. So why is it an FI?
Yeah, I think there's some conversations where it is still going to be applicable. I know from speaking to Neil Bridgman, basically, on the railway sector, for example, I think that's a clearance where they have to use FI from time to time, and it's going to be similar in other places. I think you're right, Craig and Richard, that it has been abused. We know it has, but trying to solve that and remove it from use from those who maybe do need it, you know, maybe the sledgehammer to the problem. I don't know. I don't want to talk on Neil's behalf, but I've seen his post on LinkedIn around all of that, and he made a good point. He did, so as usual.
There will still be times when I have to apply an FI code, 100%.
Yeah.
But I don't think that should automatically fail an installation, and I think you should almost have to justify why you've why you've FI'd, why it's not a limitation, why you've not been able to test it, rather than just FI, unsatisfactory, go away, come back another day.
Yeah. I don't think we can really argue with that. I think that's sensible, but there's
and that's a change.
Doing away with it altogether. That's the thing that I think people are worried that might be the next move.
Well, I don't. But again, that's the point of the DPC, isn't it? That conversation we've all had together, which is a sensible conversation. There are points for and points against, but hopefully there's been enough people that have left comments on it for then a further discussion to happen at JPEL level and come up with something sensible, you know. But you can't stay the way it is, because it is literally FI for a lot of stuff which is wrong, and it, you know, ultimately ends in being an unsatisfactory report, and then people will use that to gain further, you know, income by charging for loads of unnecessary remedials or further time, which costs further money. So it's not everyone, which is a shame, but it is abused, and so, you know, a change needs to happen. What that change will be and how that will look, we'll see potentially by 26. But at least they're addressing it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And we had the X code for the DNO's equipment as well, which I was skeptical about before, but I actually think that's been a good move, passing that onus back into their space and out of ours. So it's just adapting as these things come along. Electricians don't like change, do they? Let's be honest. We just like to continue with what we know. It would be nice to see a lot of these inspections being carried out properly. I think that's the underpinning issue behind all this. We know the epidemic that's out there of the ICRs especially that don't seem to be given the time that they should, and that the pricing models around all of that. So, if we're working towards improving that, then all good. That's something that must happen.
But I think it's also the scaremongering that takes place in the industry, I'll call it, from the little bits and the little things that I'm involved in. Nothing happens quickly in this. Nothing is one person's opinion. So realistically, if we were going to get rid of FI, my opinion, it would take at least 10 years before that actually took place. It's not something that happens like today or tomorrow. There's so many rules and regulations around what can and can't be done, which I wasn't aware of until recently, that it isn't as simple as people might make people believe and then just go, well, they're doing this to do this, or AFDDs will be the next big thing. That's what we were all expecting an amendment for, at least I was.
Yeah.
And it hasn't really actually changed, has it? They've changed the definition of what the buildings are, but actually the requirements are still exactly the same as they were in the last amendment. So we all guess and make these scenarios as to what will be what, but actually it takes a long time.
Good point. It really does. It nearly takes as long as me getting from Ireland to England. It takes a very long time for stuff like that to happen. So we'll move on to having a chat about that actually. Then to the trip over to Northern Ireland that Richard's still egging me on about over here with his boat behind him, is the ETT event. And Charlotte Bamber and the team there organised. It was around 200 attendees, and they were all electrical contractors, decision makers, apprentices, lecturers. About 200 or so there. The venue was something else. It was amazing, and NAPIT were over there, the NIC were there, Richard and the ESF guys. There was loads of people exhibiting, and it was all centred around safe isolation. And there was, I'm going to speak for myself first, and then I'm sure Richard will give his view as well. But there was two sessions in that really struck home to me. The first has to be Louise Adamson. Hearing that delivered live that's just, I don't know how she does it. I honestly don't. The raw emotion and pain that she goes through telling that story, really to only try and help other people not have to suffer in the way she and her family have, is something else. And it was deadly silent after she finished. How anyone could not have a lockout kit in their tool bag after hearing that, I don't know. And the other one was Brian Monson, who is the Deputy CEO of the Health and Safety Executive in Northern Ireland. And he delivered a really interesting session around sort of valuing our safety more widely, not just around electricity, and some of the things that he's seen in his 30-year career, going out to incidents and the investigations that happen around all of that. And I collared him at that event and introduced him to Richard, and we got him to come onto this podcast. He's going to come and have a chat with us. And I think that'd be really interesting to get that over to people in their training stage, in their apprenticeships, and hear that point of view. So I'm really looking forward to that one, and obviously getting to spend time with Rich, Dave, and the NAPIT boys, and Vanessa. We had a nice meal out and a bit of socialising. That was fantastic. So I had a great time. Brilliant event. What do you make of it, Rich?
Yeah, again, didn't know really what to expect, because you never really know with these events whether they're going to be well attended, whether the technical content of it is going to be any good, etc. The layout, the venue, there's so many elements to it, whether I'm going to get a slow boat or a fast boat, all that type of stuff. But I was blown away by, as soon as we got into the grounds of this place. It's a big country manor kind of exhibition space on another level, and because it's Christmas, there were huge giant balls that are all lit up with LEDs everywhere, big giant Santa Claus and reindeers, and it was incredible. So because we couldn't get in the venue on the evening to set up prior to the next morning, everyone was up bright and early, 6:30 or whatever, to get in and get everything set up and unpack everything and stuff. And fair play to Mark, made his way across on the slow boat. But, you know, he's got all his gear with him and tried to give him a hand to get that out because that weighs a fair bit. But yeah, I mean, you know, initially I was blown away by Ryan, you know, from the HSC, where he had an image of lots of different types of shoes and boots on his presentation. And he said, look, I want everyone to just consider what it would be like to live in somebody else's shoes, or for you not to be in your own shoes of an evening. And, you know, there's a bit of thought process going on. I thought, oh, you know, sounds pretty interesting. And then, as Mark said, he spoke about a lot of incidents that he'd been to and spoke about being interviewed. But then what about if you're interviewed under caution? And then it becomes a little bit more serious, doesn't it? And spoke about some bad practices and various cases that he'd attended in his time. Very, very knowledgeable man, but a fantastic presentation. So I was blew away by that. And then Louise came on, and Jesus, as Mark said, you know, I've never seen a presentation from her where I've been there in person. I've seen snippets, and I used to use quite a lot of her story that's, you know, widely available on YouTube, etc. To a lot of the learners that I used to deliver the health and safety unit, and especially the safe isolation unit, to make them see why it's so important, what the next thing we're going to be learning, why it's so important. And it was just incredible the way that the presentation was put together, and it was kind of building up a story of her relationship with the brother. And then it led into, you know, what a brother's job was as such, and the job that he went on that particular evening. And it was a rush job, and everybody had to let's get the job finished. So he went with a couple of his pals, and this led into that, which led into this, which led into that. And ultimately, it ended up with him, you know, tragically losing his life. But it was a catalogue of errors and problems within the management of the company and other things that led to his unfortunate death. And it was the other bits after, you know, she spoke about the different processes within the court case and the witnesses and things like that, and then other elements that, you know, contributed towards that. But it was incredible, and it just blew me away, really. I was a bit lost, you know, a bit tearful with that, and that set the scene, really. And then there was some fantastic presentations from lots of different technical people, and just really enjoyed the day. It was nice to catch up with people, you know, face to face. I've never met Louise face to face, and it's always nice to see Mark as well. We had to wait for him for a while though; he was still on the boat, but he did get there eventually. But
Great.
I was going to say, I heard that all you were doing was measuring who had the biggest Christmas tree in the bedroom, to be honest. So
yeah, every room had a Christmas tree. I was saying today, I don't know where they stored them all.
Figure the coffee machine out in there, though. I don't know if you got yours to work.
No, I didn't try. But it was just incredible.
I mean, Richard has to fly in his jet, doesn't he? Because he's got to get a spa session in before the day starts to be able to, like.
That's it. That's on his tab straight away. He's pampered from start to finish. But yeah, I think Brian set the tone for that, actually, because he'd actually said to me earlier on in that day that he's delivered lots of this stuff where he gets into the technical aspect, the regulations, the numbers and books behind things, but no one really takes that in. So he's shifted his delivery to try and make it more relatable and trace back to the real world. And that's what Louise did as well, really. Anybody who's an electrician of our age could relate, I think, to what Michael had happened to him that day, that we've all been in those shoes, on those rush jobs, where maybe we don't pay due care and attention to all the health and safety rules that we know we really should. And that's when these things can happen. And the consequences after that, you know, we might not be the people dealing with it. It's the family like Louise who have to carry that forward. And it's horrible. And it certainly made me reflect on some of our processes in the business, not so much around safe isolation in and of itself, but working at height, especially at the minute with the weather over winter and the frosty roofs. And am I looking after my team as well as I should? They're not just my employees, they're my sons. So there's that, and then there's other aspects around even traveling to and from work. All this stuff falls into that same sphere, and I think having Louise and other people like that give those real world presentations is something we should try and get more of out there in the social media space of things as well, and at these events, because it would change people's approaches, I reckon, anyway.
Louise has always been one of those people that I've never had the fortunate event to listen to, but I would. And I say I would love to. It's obviously a horrific situation, but as you say, the message that comes out, I think that should be in more colleges. I think students should be hearing that, because that's the point when you go, oh, well, it doesn't matter, it's not important, or my employer doesn't tell me to do this. And capturing it at that young age has got to be the way that starts to help this improve, I think, because we all know that game, and I know it shouldn't be the way, but some people are just going to be too stubborn and too long in the tooth to listen, or it's never happened, it doesn't matter. Getting them when they're young, getting the start of the apprenticeships, getting those conversations out there should be what takes place, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. And if there is any trainees or learners listening to this, if you go to the Apprentice 121 website, there is a page dedicated to Louise Adamson and that story, with the video on there and links over to all the work that she's doing. So if you've not seen it before and you want to check it out, you can go off to Google and find it, obviously. But if you're on the Apprentice 121 website, it's on there. Craig, you raised a good topic over on LinkedIn. I've been stalking you a little bit this week to see some of your posts and stuff around Burgess Electrical's work, and we mentioned that at the start of this. So we're getting some of that as well. You boys are knocking out some high level, high quality stuff, but around reliance on software and your testing. And I think that's something that resonated with me, because I'm very much relying on that, plugging the gaps in time at the minute that I don't have to put into what I would used to have done with design. And maybe we need to check on this stuff a bit more often. I think that was kind of the intent of your post, speaking for you a little bit. But yeah, what's your view on that?
Yeah, so for me, I put it up as almost a leading question, because we all use software. I'm not sitting here saying that I hand calculate every circuit that ever takes place, but what I worry about, and Richard will be the same, but coming from a teaching background of going, well, do people know what they're putting in, or are they just expecting that the software gives the right answer in the end? And are we potentially developing an element of skill fade of going, well, like I use electrical I think it's the best one out there. And I kind of look at that, and if I get a design at the end and it's got no errors, you kind of go, sweet.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's compliant. And is anybody actually checking that that is still set up the way? Because software is only as good as an output as what you give it in the input. And I worry, in the world of AI, in the world of everybody's too busy, do we still have the skills to sit down and go, could you do that cable calculation from start to finish and understand where to look in the regs book, understand why you've made a decision about why a type B and not a type C breaker, why should we have AFDD, should it be an RCD or should it be an RCBO, or what is double pole? Software can't tell you that information, and are we losing some of that as an industry because it is so rush all the time? So it was an intentional lead-in post to try and see what the general thought process was out there, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, Richard, you're old school in your design approaches. I think from the episode we did around that software, Spencer came on with us, didn't he, and ran through it. So I guess I can give your answer for you, but you can do it yourself.
I obviously seen Craig's post, but I didn't comment. To be honest, we didn't actually have time to come back to that, because it'd be nice to go back into that OEM stuff, because I was very impressed with it. I've got to say that. But I share Craig's thoughts on that, because when is it, or how long will it take before those skills have completely gone, because you are reliant upon software or whatever it might be to do that job for you? And you've got to move with the times, and you've got to use the tools that are available to you to save time. And for me, for my little bit of a play with it, what an amazing bit of kit. And I'm sure the guys behind that spend hours and everything to get that as good as it is. But how many sparks can actually still do a basic cable calc and think about all the things that we've spoke about in those few examples that we had great fun doing this year? Probably not many, I would suggest. Not many. But how many people actually design stuff anyway on a very simple, basic level? Nothing to do with some of them huge jobs that yourself and Craig do, but from a domestic level, a ring final circuit's a ring final circuit in it. Lighting circuit's a lighting circuit. You don't need cable calcs for that, do you? Just put 1.5 in for the lighting, 2.5 for the ring final, put a 10 mil in or a 6 mil if you've got it on your van. From a domestic level, that doesn't happen, does it? And
no,
we talked about this in the past, but someone's signing for the design. But they don't know what they're signing for. So I don't know. It's a great conversation to have, and maybe explore it a little bit next year as well. But it's interesting.
Well, my favourite one is on electrical M, you get the selectivity study analysis.
Yeah.
I would say most people, I don't think, spend that much time understanding selectivity or discrimination for old money, whatever you want to call it these days.
Yeah.
But you can drag the lines about on that selectivity study between the different faults to make it where they don't cross. But are you aware of the effects you've actually done to the breakers and your MCCBs or however you set that up by dragging the lines to get rid of your warnings? And I would say probably not. Like,
No.
and we done as a business, we done Spencer's training courses a couple of weeks ago. We got him in and we got all of our project managers and our designers and everybody on it and just sort of refreshed. And even when you're looking at it and you're listening to him and he'll say something and you go, I don't think I fully understood that. But
Yes.
it's really important as to how to control the software, and even down to simple things of the way I made boards and I set buzz bars up. He showed me another way to do it. Both can be compliant, but his way seemed to make a lot more sense. And it's like, you need that input, you need that refresh, you need that understanding, because we are not living and breathing software 10 hours a day like he is every day. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's been a running joke between me and Mark for years that all Spencer's ever told us is we do it wrong.
That's what he tells me all the time, because I've still not sat through Spencer's training, and he's kindly offered it to me lots and lots and lots. So I need to take him up on that, because it's just trying to work with the tool at the end of the day, isn't it? It's a tool.
Yeah.
And if you don't put the effort to learn how to use it, you won't get the best from that tool. And I'm sure that's the case for me. I use quite a small part of it. I'm sure you're using it in a much bigger work rate with CAD drawings and all the rest of that stuff. For me, it's much more simplistic in circuit design. But I would say 90% of the designs we're doing through solar PV, so outside of normal electrical stuff, it's done with software. Certainly, its origins within that, and I will cross-reference and check from time to time. I think there's two angles with this where it's a positive and a negative. I think there's lots of the circumstances you described, Richard, of these domestic settings where there's probably no design going on, if we're being honest, where this software being utilized might encourage some people to start thinking and going through that design process and maybe seeing that actually that 2.5 mil cable they're putting in isn't suitable and they need a bigger cable, and those old rule of thumbs become dispelled. So maybe that'll happen. But some of the top end stuff, the likes of work you're doing, Craig, where design is so important and people are working from plans and the big projects, how are we going to set the time aside for engineers like yourself to work back through that design from time to time and see if it is where it should be? I don't know if that's actually happening right now, but maybe it's something that needs factoring in as part of a review process. I don't know.
And it has to. We have two people look at our design. So like we designed a project this week, for example. It's a 2-4 job. It's empty. It's mains all the way from the service head. Light and power. Sam at Oval is coming and doing solar and car chargers onto the project as well. And we are getting asked, does the main head, does the fuse need upgraded based on working back from all of your calculations? And we have to give a decision to that. We've got 250 amps coming into a building. Is it big enough to run the 2-4 building, to run the mechanical, to run your power, to run your solar, to run your chargers? That's a big cost if you get that decision wrong, because we all know the DNO are not coming to upgrade to 400 amps for £5, are they? Like, so you have to be sure. So the way that we do it is not everything's checked by hand, because it's not. I wouldn't come on here and lie. But I have a designer that works as part of my team. He will do the design. He will get it to where he feels he is happy. Myself or Johnny or Woody, our project director, one of us will then review that to check if we can see anything that stands out. And if anything does stand out, then you go and you check it and you work at that back. So it's a process we put in place as a company. It doesn't mean we don't get things wrong, because we do, but 95% of our projects are consultant led and consultant checked, and everything is being reviewed. So selfishly, from my point of view, the biggest thing you don't want to do is go and sit across the table from somebody who embarrasses you because you haven't done your job properly.
Yeah. Yeah, and we have that in our smaller business where Matthew will lead a design or I'll do it, and we'll check each other. You know, keep a check on each other. Even Nathan as well. Now he's having input into some of these things. You know, everyone's got a point of view, and as long as you've got that free discussion, so I'm sure your installers might say, actually, Craig, this route of cable you've planned through this building, it could maybe be better if we did it like this, and that's kind of an adaptation on the project.
Yep.
I think those kind of things need to happen where there is that chat, and it's the same with the software. And it was a really good post. It was. I commented in a way that, trying to be honest myself, really, that it's not something that I'm currently doing, and maybe that's not right. And to get people thinking along those lines, fair play to you, because there'll be a lot of companies out there that are paying no attention to design at all, and the ones that are massively led by just the software. And that's maybe something industry needs to look at moving into the world of AI, where it might get to the point of you just uploading your CAD drawings to Copilot or whatever, and all of a sudden you've got full circuit schematics and a layout done for you.
Yeah.
I don't maybe living the dream, especially if it's right. But we're on that journey, aren't we, in a minute?
And I agreed with your comments completely, and I sort of played a bit of devil's advocate, and Richard will enjoy this from when we used to teach a level 3, was you always guaranteed that people never knew about, putting a ring final circuit, the load at 26 amps, they try and do it off 32 amps, and then they'd come out with 10 mils and go, I'll put 2 10 mils in a ring circuit in the back of a socket, and you'd be like, you ever tried to put that in there? And it was always the first thing I looked for in a project, because if they didn't go and find that reg or find that bit of information, the load was always 32 amps. They guaranteed it was taking you to a 10 or a 16 mil cable, and you're putting that in the back of a socket. And that was always my way of initially understanding if the person in front of me understood the design that they were looking at, because it's a fine line, isn't it, between compliance with regulations and physically installing it on the ground. They're two completely different things. And as you say, Mark, that for us as a company is a difference between our electricians and our foremen, for example. Our foremen running the jobs, most of what we design, we've never entered the building from my team. So therefore, our foremans very much are looking at our drawings and our design on day one and going, that doesn't work for the fabric. We need to look at how we do this way or do that way. And they'll send it back and we'll go, yeah, okay, you're still compliant, crack on. Or actually, no, got to look at this or think about this. How are you going to do that? Because, as we all know, there's only one way to do electrics, right?
And we all agree on that as electricians. There's never any dispute or argument in the industry, isn't there? So we've got some exciting stuff coming up as we move towards the end of this year anyway, and there's some cool stuff that ESF, Electrical Safety First, are doing next year. So we'll cover that off first, Richard, and it's a bit of a link up you've got with the Learning Lounge. Yeah,
it's from subscribing to it with a couple of colleges who used to teach at years ago, to actually being part of developing or certainly updating a lot of the stuff. Some of it never changes, your science of principle stuff, your earthing systems, your basic protection, your full protection. But to be directly involved with the scripts on that and some of the videos, myself and Dave have spent quite a lot of time with Terry Brown that runs or looks after the Learning Lounge. Obviously still got Dave Austin as his main presenter, with a couple of new young electricians that have joined the presenting team.
You on there? New young presenter.
And we've done a collaboration with them as the charity, and that will be from January. It will be available to all third-year apprentices throughout the country for free, and it will have all of the units that make up the qualification, whether it be EAL, Sitting Guilds, whatever, because the units might have a different number, but fundamentally they're all the same. And that they're good because, for instance, if they're talking about, horticultural, agricultural locations within Part 7 of the regs, Dave Austin or one of the other presenting team will actually be in that environment. The video will be with them in that environment, talking about specific requirements within that section, etc. Or it might be talking about something as simple as fuses, whether it be HBC, HRC fuses, and there'll be, an image of a fuse that will come on to the learning, and it will dissect it and open it, and you'll see all the silica sand in it, and all. It's just really, really good resource for free.
That is incredible.
So I think that's really, really good thing, and it's been an honour, really, a pleasure to be involved in something I've thought it's been really good over the years to be part of that and to offer that free.
Yeah, so I guess you were saying it's free at the point of use, but I'm assuming it's
Yeah.
you guys and Learning Lounge funding this, because I did some training
Yes.
years ago now with Learning Lounge. It's
Yeah.
brilliant online
Yeah.
resource. I
Worth.
think it
Yeah.
was Gary Gundry and Dave Austin.
Gary Gundry's. Yeah. So Gary Gundry will review the scripts again. So once he's happy with it, he'll then come to myself and Dave. We run through it, and we will see things like Craig would from a teaching and learning point, where something needs to be reinforced again and again, because there's nothing wrong with reinforcing stuff because it's aimed at learners. And the more you reinforce something, it becomes embedded in the brain, because we know the types of questions that come up in the exams for these different units and the assessments, what's involved. Do you know what I mean? And even at AM2, all of that stuff, it's repetitive, but if you can embed something in the brain, it might be enough to get them over the line and build on their knowledge, and you keep building on that underpinning knowledge. And the units are they're transferable, if that kind of makes sense, because a bit of learning in one unit will transfer then earthing systems, for instance. When you start looking at your earth fault loop impedance unit, you need to have an understanding of the fault path to understand what earth fault loop impedance is. So they build on unit on unit on unit, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm excited about it, actually, but we'll do more and more promotion as and when it becomes further advanced. But it's getting close. As soon as I've got some more news, I'll obviously come back to you and we'll share that on the Apprentice 121 website and stuff. But it's good stuff. Yeah, it's good.
I tried to sign up to it, but I couldn't prove that I made it to the third year of my apprenticeship, so I got lost out.
So that's going to be free to third year apprentices cross country. Sensational. That support is going into the grassroots, and I've got to say the industry of things sometimes gets a bad rep, and electric safety first are part of the industry of things. That's you putting some frankly massive funding into trying to help people at the grassroots of industry become qualified electricians, and we need to celebrate that and get that shared out there. And I'll certainly do anything I can to get the message out about this, Richard, and fair play to you, Dave, the team at ESF and Learning Lounge.
Yeah, because it's one of them things that we've seen that many times in our industry where people complain and moan about stuff. Well, it's not going to help anything. It's not going to help anything. It's not about moaning about something. It's accepting what's there and what can be done to try and improve things. And that's a way of then. Well, you've got to get them to use it, of course, if it's available to them, because some will and some won't. You can't. Nothing you can do about that. You can't moan then if the resources are there. And there's loads of great stuff out there now with Gaz at eFix and various other YouTube channels, yours included, Mark, as well. But you can't, you're leading a horse to water, whatever it is, you can't do it. But if the stuff's available to them and it's of really good quality, and there's questions at the start and at the end to check your knowledge and stuff, it all adds value, doesn't it? It all adds value. So, and I'm
much needed. I mean, you guys and Gary Gundry, Dave Austin, and the team giving that advice direct is way better than an idiot like me on YouTube having a go at doing something. So,
but it all helps, doesn't it? Because
I think it's brilliant, mate. I think that's really, really good, and it should be shouted about from the rooftops. I hope the industry of things outside of ESF are going to help you with that as well.
I've got all the City and Guilds course books and everything like Craig's got on his shelf, but it doesn't bring it to life. Whereas you're out on site. This is the installation, this is the design, this is the equipment, this is what the reg says, this is what we're doing. That is gold. That goes beyond looking at something in a book. And that's why the Learning Lounge is good, because it goes on site and it goes and looks at things properly. Whereas a book doesn't do that. It's great, but it's not the same. If you can get, and no one learns the same way as somebody else. So the more stuff we've got out there, some of it's not great, some of it's brilliant, but it doesn't matter. But there's loads of stuff now. There weren't nothing like that way back in the 90s when I was in my apprenticeship. You just had your old CITB books. That's all that was there, and your notes. That's all that was there. Now there's so much stuff out there. But
I wouldn't know. I came through in about 2015, mate. So that predates.
Just got off the boat.
I'm too young. But no, there's other great work that you guys are involved with as well. The Safe Isolation campaign that I was over in Northern Ireland representing on that stand, ESF, the NIC Cert Show, they're all behind that as well. And we've got a little industry effort through Apprentice 121 that we're doing. It was supposed to be before the end of the year. I'm still hopeful we get through all 6 sites before that, but they might end up spilling into January because we're all busy with stuff. But there's kind of direct college support where we're taking some equipment in. We've got Proteus distribution boards. We've got stuff from the NIC books. This one here, which I have to one side. So this is the IET wiring regulations, and you'll see on the front there is a join the NIC student scheme. So they'll actually put that on the front of every one of the books, where they can scan the QR code and you go off and you get access to the pocket guides, which are brilliant, by the way. The e-news, Connections magazine, live on demand webinars, so they can watch and access all that, and technical advice and support information and articles and stuff, and totally free. And this book as well, that can't be a low-cost book. It's pretty thick. I've given it a skim. I haven't read it, I've got to be honest, but they've provided 400 of those as part of everything else. And then also these lockout kits in this very fetching bag, branded up for you guys, with locks and toggles, stuff all in there. It looks like someone sensible might have played a hand in putting that kit together, because there's only one key in it. No names mentioned, Richard and Dave. So that's good. There's 400 of those as well, which they've provided. Decks, flashings. I think they delivered the day you came, Craig, because Craig
Yeah.
here, and they sent a couple of pallets of like bird guard, your flashing kits going around tiles, cable entries through roofs, all stuff that colleges probably won't be buying because they're getting cables and clips and basics. That's all they've really got budget for. So that's fantastic. Calidus Wholesale supplying some solar panels. We've got tools from Klein Tools and Superrod, Helm and Titan as well, croppers. Ideal Industries have sent connectors and lockout kits. Try not to forget anyone we've had. Safe isolation kits from TIS. Regular electricians have sent in multifunction testers. We've had 3 or 4 of those. Pat testers, stocks of cable, sundries. So all your conduit, trunking, metal and plastic, just normal sparks, sending boxes of that in. Breakers. Solax are providing some inverters and batteries, and IMD the same, and Give Energy, which is kind of the headline behind all of that, of giving an inverter and battery storage system to each college as well. And the first one we're going to is Craig's old stomping ground, Waltham Forest, on Monday, and it's Thursday today, I think. And I've been trying to organise that delivery because I can't take solar panels, batteries, all these boxes in my van. So we're trying to get all that organised. And you're going in, aren't you, mate, on Monday morning?
Yeah, I'm going back to meet them, see the old lot. I think a lot of people have changed since I was there, but you know, they've become an outstanding college since I've left, so take from that what you want. And they're doing really good things, and they're trying hard. So I'm looking forward to going back and standing in front of students, and they've booked a room for me to go and bowl like the level 1s and 2s and 3s and talk about a bit of industry, and then you're coming down and meeting us, Mark, and we're going to give some stuff out to them, and then it should just be a nice day all round, I think. And then they'll get a lot of value from it. They'll understand. They'll enjoy a lot of it. And whilst Waltham Forest, out of the colleges I worked for over my time, were one of the more accommodating, understood, they're very focus driven, there's still a reality of government funding involved, and that's not meant to be a political post. That's just the reality. The funding for students in colleges is government controlled, and that limits them. But they're doing some fantastic stuff just now. They're trying to build eco homes on campus and show all different types of evolving construction, and this will hopefully just help support some of that. And whilst you're being very modest about it, I think you need to be given a hats off, Mark, that you have done this, you have organised all this and pulled it together. And I think your last one in total was somewhere near £90,000 worth of kit being donated to industry, wasn't it, from your efforts? So fair play to you. I just get to be the one that goes along for the ride and pretend I know what I'm doing, whereas you've actually put the graft in and organised all this, and you should take
Badly
merit from
organised
that.
it so far, because we've not got any firm dates. It's you who pushed that date in the end, because I've just been kind of, when we're going to fit all this in, the approach. But yeah, it's getting on with it. And there's other people like Richard and ESF are maybe going to get involved with bits and pieces. And Craig over at the IET had some posts out a while ago about them wanting to go off and do stuff in colleges. Nothing to do with anything we're doing. I think that's brilliant. All these organisations really focusing in on grassroots and trying to help the colleges, because again, not being political with all of this, they're not getting the best support from the government of things, much like employers aren't in that training space of apprenticeships. So anything we can do as industry and individuals, even small gestures of donating a drum of cable, you know, it all helps. And it's just a nice thing to do to end the year off. And we've got a little party as well, haven't we, next week? Something
we have.
to go and watch Richard's dance moves. He's gonna.
Oh, to be honest, I don't really like parties. It's not my.
But-
It's not my.
I heard some of us are more important than others next week, aren't they? Some of us get to sit on a posh table, and some of us
That's
are just
right.
in the crowd, don't we, Mark?
Yeah, we're just at the back somewhere, mate, buried down the
Yeah.
back. And Richard will be with all the big wigs down the front as one of the judges for the ECN Awards.
Yeah.
So we're joking, but Apprentice 121 has been put forward for one of those, and we've got a little table this time. So there's a few of us going down, people who've helped. So Dan, who provided the solar rail, which is sitting above me right now, he's coming. So that's Dan from DMH Renewables. I'm hopeful that Mr. Bridgman is going to come. He's currently over in, well, I won't say where he is because it might cause him trouble. But yeah, Neil's hopefully going to come, maybe Ricky as well, and a few other people who've helped out through the course of that. I think it'd be really nice. We might even let Richard come and sit with us if he can spare 5 minutes for the commoners down the back.
Well, I've got the other half with me, so I should be on my best behaviour.
Really? Okay. She keeps me checked, does she? I like the sound.
Well, no, she's worse than me, so good luck.
We've got one slightly awkward thing about that night, though.
Oh.
The last time I tried the tux on was last year when we were last there together.
We've all been saying that recently. I don't think mine's going to fit. It must shrink in the wash. Everything shrinks in the wash. That's got to be what it is.
Yeah.
Definitely going to shrink. I'm looking forward to it. It was really good last year. It just went so quick for me, but yeah. But they've sent the itinerary around today. I think it's about 6 o'clock start, 6:30, something like that. But it was a really good event, really well organised. You know, fair play to the girls at ECN. They do a really good night. So I'm looking forward to that. If not, just to have a chat and have the crack and talk non-shop or shop, because Sparkies can't help it, can we? You know, you go shopping and you're looking up at the tray or something. It's just the way it is. Me and Dave was walking through the airport, and because Dave used to work at Birmingham Airport, and he said, "Oh yeah, these lightings all wide. It's all wide in 4mm, mate. It's all wide in 4mm. Rings, the radial circuits all wide in 6mm." He said, "And their switch rooms there. You know, you just can't help it, can you?"
You should have started snagging him and telling him it should be 6mm on his lights and 10mm on his power.
I'll let you snag him.
Yeah, he's someone you won't want to mess with. That's fair dues. Fair dues.
Apparently, Mark's boat trip took so long he managed to fill the ICR.
That's it. On the whole boat. That's with flying colours. Everyone will be pleased to know, sailing back to Ireland tonight. Yeah, you know that I'm getting ribbed for that, but it's a really relaxing way to travel. That flight. What was it? 20 minutes, Richard.
It was unbelievable. It's supposed to be 45 minutes, and literally, it was if we just took off. They just brought the drinks round. Oh, you know, the captain come on and said, "Oh, we're just starting our descent now. We've made up 20 minutes." It was literally just over 20 minutes, up, down, done. Unbelievable. Couldn't believe it. Quickest.
25 minutes to park the van on the boat, so you're already winning before I even got out the port.
I'm saying it was just like, but yeah, really, really good. I'm hoping to attend that again next year. I had a good chat with Charlotte. There's more we can do as a charity over in Northern Ireland, so it was nice to talk about what we can do further. We've donated another 450 of those lock-off kits to ETT to distribute in Northern Ireland, so I'm hoping to attend a few of those colleges. It'd be nice to do some more stuff with Brian as well over there, the HSC there, and Louise is interested in doing 1 or 2 bits next year over here. So I think collectively together, and again, hats off to you, Mark, for coming up with the whole thing at the start of the year to get all these organisations to work together, because that's never easy. It's like Dave trying to run the rag. It's impossible. But everyone did, to be fair, and everyone's contributed over this year and those different events. We've all done a little bit where we can. And hopefully that will continue into next year. So, you know, a round of applause for all of that, because nobody else would have done it. Everyone talks a good game, but no one actually gets it done. And I don't know how you do it. I don't know where you find the time. I really don't know how you do it, mate.
It's AI and software. We've already answered that. Craig's linked.
Right
now, AI and software are walking your dogs at the moment, aren't they?
They are. You've got it right.
AI and software are keeping the other half happy, make her a nice cup of tea.
AI is not that good yet. I've loved chatting tonight, guys. Anyway, I think we've had a really good one, and we're going to come back soon. We're going to get these more regular again. We've been saying this, but we're all committed to that, and I'm going to make sure I set the time aside to do this justice, because it's one of the things I really enjoy doing this podcast. And there's lots of stuff in it that is helping people in training. And we'll try and get organised with Brian Monson to come on soon, if not the next one, within the next few. and we'll get on to our earthing and bonding as well that we've been mentioning for a good while. So we'll be back in the not too distant future. Anything else you two want to add before we end it?
No.
All good?
No, been a good job. Yeah, excellent.
If you've enjoyed this episode, as always, get involved in the comments. We love the interaction and engagement. If you've got any topics you want us to cover or things that you'd like us to ask some of the guests coming on, the same. And otherwise, we'll see you on the next one.
Bye all.
See you later.